Well, hello there, everyone. Don't be shy. Hey, guys. I am welcoming you back to the AQINA Writers Bookclub Podcast. This is Ryan Sierra from the channel of Ryan Sierra, and today I'm with...
Me, Diana, or
All right, we're
or
here
the
with
other.
Smalls Noodle from the channel Smalls Noodle. This is the AQINA Writers Bookclub Podcast, Episode 2, and today we're going to be talking about, I guess, Fallout and House of the Dragon, because those are the last two shows we were watching. I know they're not books. Or are they? I mean, people have to read when they play those games. Especially, obviously, House of the Dragon. So, what do you want to talk about first? Guest? No, I'm kidding.
Let's talk about I guess Fallout.
Okay. So, it's been interesting watching Fallout because we were, of course, we started off the middle of this year, of course, watching The Boys. And then we finished that, and, now I'm kind of like, oh, what do we watch? And this is, of course, trying to find something to tie us over in between episodes of House of the Dragon, too. And you kind of click on this show for Fallout. I'm like, all right, let's see what this is about. And, I'm kind of tepid. I'm always a little tepid about video game adaptation, things. But I think that's just because of, like the movies more so. Like, I think if you're doing a show, I think a show is always a great job because it just gives you more time with the characters. And, I know, I know a lot of people liked Walton Goggins as the Ghoul, and man, let me tell you, if he is not just pretty much like the other main character alongside Ella Purnell. So, what are your immediate first impressions, Smalls Noodle?
I thought it was really cool because you sit there and hold on. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I hadn't really played um the game very much, and so but I knew what it was. Like I knew of it, and so it was cool to kind of go into it a little blind.
Yeah, I think that is definitely interesting. I think you're going to appreciate it a lot more too if you go into it blind in a way. But there's a lot of Easter eggs though from the show, or sorry, the video game. There's a lot of Easter eggs from the video game, and I totally was like calling them out left and right after I booted up Fallout New Vegas. As people might not know, I'm more of a fan of Fallout New Vegas, and I think there was the dumb internet, flame wars and stuff about like, oh, what's better, New Vegas or 3? And of course, then people it's like, oh, we don't even talk about 76 or 4. But I think New Vegas is a lot of fun. But obviously, the show was initially going off of like 3 and such, and the sort of the look of 3 and 4. But it's interesting to me because at the end, now spoiler, oh god, spoilers. At the end of season 1, when the dad gets away and goes to this other like city, that looked like something from Fallout New Vegas to me. I swear I've seen that in Fallout New Vegas, but alas, it is a very interesting show. The way that it starts is so fascinating, and just the fact that the ghoul is basically the sort of second main character. He's pretty much like another main character. He's like a deuteragonist or so. Um, he's sort of and he's an interesting take on the jerk with a heart of gold trope, because his thing is that he doesn't even necessarily. It's been like 200 years, and he's only a jerk with a heart of gold in part because he actually sort of has kind of been losing his sense of humanity, and that he actually just was like a good standing American man before. So, it's very interesting to see that. It's more like not jerk with a heart of gold, but like heart of gold turned jerk trying to still hang on to the humanity. And it's cool to see like how a lot of the show is about the flashbacks, and the final episode, episode 8 of season 1, with all the flash.
Like, and I get, we know what this series is going to be because she's gonna go and she's gonna find her dad, and it's about her journey to find her dad. And then you sit there and you start realizing that, like, oh, this isn't just to, like, find her dad. You just
Right.
start to learn about the vaults themselves, and even the vaults themselves, we only know her vault, really, and maybe one other vault, where it's kind of like, we learn that, like, Vault 4 is, you know, it was an experiment of using the wasteland creatures and humans. Like, they were merging them for some sort of mutant stuff.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
There's the
really
inciting incident. That's all that is.
Yeah. And we don't know even what Lucy's experiment, because she gets asked, oh, well, what was your Volt experiment? And she's kind of like, what do you mean? So we don't even know what her Volt experiment was, because we learn later that each Volt that was made had in a quote-unquote experiment, with, like,
Right.
the other company. But we don't know that until later. But what we start out with is a girl trying to find her dad, and we're going to see her experience. And as we get through it, the experience, it becomes less of, I mean, there's still the element of, like, her finding her dad, but you also get introduced to Maximus, a dude who was orphaned in this mysterious explosion that we don't know like, why it happened, who becomes this, like, Knight of the Brotherhood, because we find out it's not just Vault people. It's not just random raiders. There's also another, like, thing you can do, which is be a Knight of the Brotherhood. And so Maximus, and meet his, and, you know, his journey of his knight being, like, terrible, and stuff like that, and then they meet, and then you meet this ghoul who seems, for all intents and purposes, seems like he's gonna be the bad guy in the situation. Like, he's an obstacle in like, Lucy's journey.
And he is a bit rough and tumble. He's a bit like, hey, the world's a bad place.
Yeah, but you start to get little clues on who he is when, like, and I mean him as the ghoul. Like, and I think there's a lot of times where people didn't think that the ghoul and the guy we get the flashbacks of are the same person. And I think
that's
one
so
of the
weird.
It is, but one of the ways that people, you could say, it ties it, I guess, better is when he goes to save, you know, he goes into, he goes to sell Lucy to this mom and pop shop, as it were, of human organs.
Yeah, because the flashbacks are basically dreams after, like, episode 1, so you know that that's him.
Yeah, you know it's him. So it's like, but he sells Lucy to his mom and pop organ shop, and he, you know, ends up killing all the ghouls that are in there, mostly, for most part, and somewhat other things. But you see him watch this old timey TV show of this what seems to be this random dude, but, like, that's him. He's watching his old features, his old movies, and it's interesting to see that because, you know, the ghoul is him 200 years past what we see him in the flashbacks. And in the flashbacks, he's a loving, caring father. He is a war veteran. He is a gunslinger, for the TV screen. And, he's a good person. And so it's interesting to see who he becomes as this ghoul person, where he's kind of not caring. He's kind of very, not reclusive, but he doesn't care. He doesn't seemingly care about anything. Like, we don't really have a motive for him. He just seems to be this dude who is at it for a paycheck, essentially.
Yeah, he's the bounty hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, so all we know is he's an entrepreneur in the first episode, I want to say, that Vault-Tec was just for rich people. Because it's marketed as, like, I think for everybody. And like, you know, when he starts doing the advertising in the first few episodes. But as we get deeper into the series, you realize that everyone who is in the vault, or who was commissioned to be in the vault, they came from rich people. And so this idea that Lucy had of, we're gonna go save the wasteland, you know, that Vault 30, I think it was 32 that she's from, or
I think it was
33?
32. It might be 33 actually.
You know what? Okay, let's say Vault 33, because I think Vault 32 is the Raiders.
Yeah.
That the Raiders. But you know, her thing of, oh, we're gonna come in, because she repeatedly says this throughout the series, where she's like, oh no, we're gonna come up and we're gonna save the wasteland. That's what, you know, we're gonna save everyone. We're gonna repopulate, you know. And you start to realize that the people who were in these vaults had money, and everyone else who could not afford these vaults, because I'm assuming these vaults were like thousands of dollars, if not millions. So people with money,
maybe, considering, like, you got the flashback in the last episode of her dad, and he was like a government worker like that.
Yeah, like he was and that specific vault that he was in was owned by Vault-Tec. So I think he probably like bought like a share and in whatever, because that's all Vault-Tec employees. Those specific vaults we were shown in the very beginning were his vault, his company's vault.
Right.
And so it's very interesting, because then it makes you think about the fact that everyone who is on the surface, and everyone who became a ghoul, because ghouls are like discriminated against. Like, it's not really clear why people don't like ghouls, considering they're just the victims of radiation. As we
Well,
learn.
I mean, it is a tragedy, but they turn into kind of like these feral. They turn feral.
They do turn feral. I'm just saying that, like, for like when they're human, when they're very much like still walking and talking. Like, Ghoul, I think the very first episode, he shows up for his bounty, and like one of the ladies is like, your kind isn't welcome here. And it's like, okay, I would like to know more about that, because like, is it because they eventually turn into zombies, or is it because like they're a reminder of the wasteland, of you, when you are there in the wasteland for too long, you start to turn. Like, we meet this ghoul who turned into a ghoul 28 years ago from like the episode. And I'm like, and we can infer, the ghoul, who is named Cooper Howard, that he was near like he was literally near a bomb, because it starts off with the bomb and then we cut to Lucy. That he had direct radiation involvement, but this guy who we meet, who, spoiler alert, he dies. He doesn't last very long.
Yeah, the one who was the 20-some ghoul.
Yeah, the 28-year-old ghoul. We don't know if like how long he'd been alive, how long he then was able to be, like, because he had been a ghoul for 28 years at that point, and it seems like that vial that shattered, those yellow vials, keep you living for a very long time. So we don't know truly like how long that man had been alive. So it raises the question of like, if you're just on the wasteland and you're breathing this radiation, like, how long for that does it take for you to become a ghoul? There's a lot of ghoul related questions I have in terms of that. And then you go into the Enclave. Now, unless I missed it, and maybe you picked up on it, and I probably missed it. I never really got the explanation for the enclave, because they just show the guy as a scientist, and then the dog, and then he's working on something, then he kills somebody, and then he leaves, and then but I'm like, you didn't show why it's such a big deal. He just stole some work and a dog and left.
Yeah. Huh. Um, so I think definitely. So I think it definitely was more of some kind of video game reference. Um, also, it's weird though because they actually peppered a lot of video game references in throughout the show, but in ways that were like very like ancillary and auxiliary. And so I'm like, oh okay, haha, it's really just a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because so the whole point about the Fallout games is that, and like I kind of forget, but the idea is like there is obviously it's nuclear war that goes hot, and it's no longer Cold War, it's hot war, and basically it's a post-apocalyptic world where people go underground, and then you go out into the waste, and an inciting event happens. Obviously, when people go under the ground, they're part of the vaults. An inciting event happens of some kind that causes like your player character in the games to like have to go above ground. In the very first game, which actually was before Bethesda, the people who made Skyrim, of course, before Bethesda owned it, Fallout 1 and 2 was made by different people. What happens is in the very first game, a water chip malfunctions, and you have to go out and like find a new one to be able to get clean water for the vault. That is like mentioned like once or twice in the show. That is not necessarily the inciting incident. The inciting incident is, of course, the bandit attack. Um, but and then of course the dad getting taken by Moldaver. So it's very interesting actually. Um, so and then of course similar thing happens in like kind of Fallout 3 and then Fallout New Vegas. Now Fallout New Vegas is actually it's a bit different. Fallout New Vegas already starts above ground. And all it is just kind of, at least a good bit of it is navigating just the above ground post-apocalyptic but kind of rebuilt world that's still obsessed with like the 1900s and the 50s and whatnot, even though the year is like 2180 or something weird. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so um, that's always kind of the inciting incident. So it's interesting to see that they made a reference to the water chip in the show actually, but they referenced it in like the second episode, and it's like it's kind of a one-off, and I'm like, oh, weird. Um, but yeah, and oh my god, man, the finale is it's so crazy. The finale, like, and it's so funny because I feel like as a show, um, I can't imagine that like people would seriously be this disinterested in it because to me, it's so big on like kind of wrapping stories together and having like lots of flashbacks. In that way, I feel like it's so right at home with like Haunting of Hill House because it's
Yeah.
constantly about this like wrapping around of like this breakup of families and stuff like that. Um, and isn't that of course funny because it's Fallout, so Fallout of family. Um, but yeah, the finale was so interesting because and then we get the ending where the dad goes to this other place, and I swear that area looks like a place in Fallout New Vegas. But what was really neat to see was the ghoul and Lucy finally actually like kind of join forces again in like a much more connected way. Like before, she was his captive, and now it's like they're kind of being more equals again because now they're going together to try to find her dad.
Yeah, it was interesting because like they do talk about the water trip, and it's this guy that she comes across um where she's like, she's like, "Hey, have you seen this dude?" um and he's like, "No, I've not seen this dude, but do you have a water trip? Because I need a water trip." and it's this whole deal. And it's very interesting that because they bring up pit boys also too, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and that's basically like the menu navigator in the games.
Yeah, so they bring up that because that's how the Raiders got in. But they do mention the Watcher very offhandedly and very much kind of like it was what, like 8 episodes we watched? Eight,
Yep.
6 episodes? Um, we still have the question of where is Cooper's wife and child? Because we start off where we see the three to four nukes that happen.
Mm-hmm.
We get 3 to 4 that happen, and we see him riding off with his daughter on a horse, and everyone trampling over each other. But we don't see what happens. Like we don't see him turning into a ghoul. We don't see like if he met up with his wife, who he was on a rocky relationship with. Because I don't know if you caught it, but she knows, or it looks like it's implied that she knows that he is listening in on her Pip Boy, on her like it,
I
on the
wonder.
version of.
I get that the wife is supposed to be, shrewd and intellectual, but like, and obviously, a little dark because she makes the business decision. Because as Matt Berry says, in the one episode, it's like the end of the world is a product, my boy. And so it's like, okay, yeah, she's conniving and she's networked and such, but I never really got that she was like she knew that he was listening in. I don't know.
I guessed it because um when she's talking about the about everything, like she's going into, oh, we're gonna have to drop the bombs ourselves. She looks at her Pip Boy, the and I'm gonna say the prototype Pip Boy because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is the prototype before they actually, or it's the final version of it. But her prototype Pip Boy that they're fixing, and she looks at it because that whole episode she's asking everyone. She's like, "Hey, my Pip Boy is acting weird. Like, do you know why it's happening?" And then Bud, the guy who is this idiot, he's like, "No, my
Right.
Pip Boy is fine. I don't know why you're." And so she's suspecting this entire episode that something is happening. And I think when she's looking through her settings, she looks at it, she kind of flips through it, and then she looks right up at the gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And then she continues. And so I'm like, maybe she doesn't know that is watching or listening in, but it's like she looks at it, she looks up almost as if she knows someone is listening to her speak. Like she may not know it's her husband per se, but like she fiddles with it and then she looks up the gallery and then the gallery shows like then it goes into Hank's office, which I don't think Hank's off. It doesn't look like she would able to be know it was Coop because he's in an office and she's in like a medical board situation with a gallery. um, and there's someone watching. I think there's like a little preview of like a person, and then it shot to Hank's office. But I think she knows someone was listening. Um, so I think that's why she kind of went like Anakin Skywalker a little bit,
Yeah.
or she went a little bit darker because she's trying to get these guys. She's one of two women in here, and they're all shouting over. And right after she, fiddles with her Pip Boy and she looks up, she starts to be like, she like takes this like deep breath, and she's like, "We're gonna drop the bomb ourselves."
Mm-hmm.
And I think she was doing that because I think she thinks that one of her bosses was listening, and so she's like, "Oh, okay, I need to prove myself in this way. I need to show that I'm like 100% team player, like." And so I'm curious.
Okay,
And
that's a much more interesting theory. So you think that she was getting listened onto by the bosses, which is so she's actually more goaded to sort of, act snappy and stuff and freak out, and incidentally freak out her husband all the more. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because when that sequence is happening, when it pans up and we see an outline out in the gallery, but we know it's not Cooper because Cooper's in the office, and she wasn't suspicious of her husband before that sequence happens. She's very much like, oh, let's calm down, let's get it together. You guys are being infighting. Like she's trying to calm them down like a mom. Like she's very much like, let's get back on the topic, let's do whatever, let's talk about your concerns. And then she fiddles with her Pip Boy. She looks up at the gallery, and then she goes, "We're gonna drop the nuke ourselves, so that we don't have to sit there and like deal with other competition. Like, why wait for the Russians to drop a nuke when we can do it ourselves?"
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
that because of that, and then that freaks Cooper out. So I would have loved to have seen, and they'll probably do this in season 2 because I feel like that's a lot of fans' questions. Is like, where's his family? How did he like turn into the ghoul? Like, what happened after that? Because we see the nukes dropping, and something I thought was interesting when I was looking it up is that she does mention she would drop the bomb herself. She was like, "We'll drop the bombs ourselves." But you see the fact that her husband is clearly out on a job gig with their daughter. And you start seeing these news. And unlike Hank, I don't think with how much it showed she loved Cooper and her daughter, I don't think she would have dropped those news. I think those are her competitors. Like the West Tech and the MGT and Robo,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Like I
The
think
other
they
investors in that meeting, in that roundtable meeting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they dropped it because so there's nothing to show in her character from what we've seen that she would drop a nuke so close to her family when she is like very family oriented. Even in the speech she gives when she's like doing her thing, she is family oriented. She is like, I'm doing this for my family. I'm like, if I have to drop the bomb themselves to ensure my daughter's future, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, of
So I
course.
think
There's a lot of sacrificial mother thing going on with the sort of the hands tied idea of I'm
yeah,
doing this
and
because I want a better world. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I also think she joined Volta, and I also think she is hand tied also in a way where she's like, they're gonna drop bombs, they're gonna drop nukes. I'm gonna do the very best I can to make sure my family is not part of their game. Like they're out of the situation that whatever these guys, whatever Voltec's thinking, whatever the competitors, like she's trying her best to not. I think she's trying her best not to be a corporate like Scrooge, but at the same time she's like playing their game to make sure her family has a certified future, and it's very different. Like the what she's doing, because I don't think she's a bad like I don't think she's like a bad guy that probably a lot of people do think. I think I think she's kind of complex in that way where she's like trying to navigate and play them and not really believe in what's happening. But it's different than Hank, where Hank dropped a bomb because his wife wanted an essentially a divorce. She's like, I'm taking the kids, I'm divorcing. And he was like, I can't have that. And he dropped a nuke on her.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Which is why, going back to the school, she turned into a ghoul from direct radiation. So I
Mm.
think how Cooper did it, where he was right in the blast site of a nuke. I think he was in the blast site because we see Rose after, because Hank dropped a bomb on Shady
Shady
Plains,
Sands. Shady Sands, yeah.
Shady Sands. He dropped a bomb in Shady Sands, and his wife was there, like directly there. I don't. The kids weren't there because it's gone, but you see her in like the very last episode because like we get a lot of the same they use the same flashback like over and over until the very last episode where the flashback gets a little bit more to it because we see her touching like Lucy's face like the same clip over and over, and then in the very last episode we see her touching Lucy's face, and then we see her getting up and we see her talking to Moldaver, and we see the cornfields, we see the kind of, it's almost like life has restarted from these nukes.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting how we get more because Moldaver is dead. Spoiler alert. I mean, I've been saying spoiler alert the entire thing. We're probably gonna have to say spoiler alert in the description.
Now, isn't this show like
But
a year or so old?
no, it came. Hold on, let me look on my phone.
I will say, her dad is definitely nasty. It's so interesting because in the last episode, he's in that cage. He's begging Lucy to see his side of the story. It's all kind of falling apart around him. He's entrapped. He can't really get his daughter to see to his side. The Brotherhood of Steel is coming. Moldaver and all the gangs and all them are going to having this gang war, this turf war, and then he should be beside himself. He should be like, oh my god, like, my life's work has led me here. Maybe I went down the wrong path. And he looks kind of beside himself, and he must be for like a good few minutes or so. But then he gets out and he totally like gets in the Brotherhood of Steel machine, and he totally turns coat and gets away from everybody. And that is literally how like a Skyrim NPC works, like insane. Dude's a Skyrim NPC.
Okay,
When you're,
so it came out this year.
but how many few months ago? How many months ago?
Well, the first episode aired in April.
Oh, okay. So it's not that. Okay, got it. Huh. Crazy twicking wing.
Like,
All right. Well, hang on. I'm gonna kill this bat. Sorry, these bats drive me batsy. Oh, Mama Luigi. All right.